Hello everyone, Monty here for Happy Lifestyle Living, and today I'm going to teach you how to make squash. Here I have spaghetti squash and I have 4 pieces of acorn squash. There were 2 acorn squash I cut in half. So the first thing I do is I cut the squash in half, whether it be spaghetti squash, acorn squash, or even butternut squash. I'm not making butternut squash today. But you cut them in half and scoop all the seeds out. Now I know some people like to roast the seeds and eat them, but I don't do that. So very simple, my recipe is really simple. People are afraid to cook squash, I don't know. I know that it is hard. You have to have a good, real heavy knife, and you have to have some arm strength to cut the squash. A little secret is microwave it for 3 to 5 minutes. You'll be able to cut it easier. And then a lot of people have been telling me lately that they ask the store to cut it for them in the supermarket they shop at, and they're more than happy to cut it for them. So just a little FYI. So I just spray the flesh with a couple of sprays of extra virgin olive oil. And then I just season simply with pink Himalayan sea salt and garlic powder. That is it. Now I cook them flesh up. Other people say they like to cook them flesh down. Do what works for you. I just like to cook it flesh up. Flesh down, it gets really messy, and I didn't realize a big difference between flesh up and flesh down. So that's why I cook it flesh up. The oven is preheated to 400 degrees. So I'm just gonna pop it in the oven at 400 degrees for about 45 minutes to an hour. You wanna poke it with a fork and it be like tender, and then you're able to poke it really easily, and then it's cooked. But usually 45 minutes to an hour, more around 50 minutes, 55 is like the perfect time. So I'll turn the camera back on when it's done, and I'll actually show you how to get the spaghetti squash out of here, because some people were asking me about that recently. All right, well I cooked it your way, but I struggled with getting it out and making it look like spaghetti. Squash lasts in the refrigerator all week long. Usually the spaghetti squash about 5 days before it gets funky, and you'll see it changes color when it gets funky, but usually it's good for about 5 days, and I make all different kinds of dishes with it. It's really, really good. And the acorn squash, either I eat it like this and I'll put something inside of it, or I will scoop it out of here and I'll make what I call acorn squash mash, which is like a mashed potatoes with acorn squash for a side dish. I'll probably give 1 or 2 of these to my mom for the week. And so she has it, she likes acorn squash, and I just love squash. Really healthy for you, very filling, high in fiber, and utterly delicious. And I'm obsessed with spaghetti squash. I love making dishes with it. So I'm gonna turn the camera off, and when it's all ready coming out of the oven, I'll show you what it looks like. Okay guys, so the squash has cooled for over an hour. I went for a nice little walk in the meantime. And I'm gonna show you how do I get the spaghetti squash out and into a bowl so I can transfer it into a storage container for the week. Again, just remind you, it stays about 5 days. You'll know when it's bad, it changes color. First of all, I just take it in my hand. If you don't wait an hour, over an hour, it's gonna be too hot for you to pick it up with your hand. You'll need like an oven mitt. And you just take a fork and you just kind of rake from the sides. Let me show you how this is. You just kind of take a fork and start raking. And you go from both sides, and then you just start picking it up, and look, it's like spaghetti, right? And so I just go back and forth from both sides, all sides, and it'll just, when it's cooked enough, it's just gonna start coming apart. And look at this. And usually a half of a big squash like this will fill up this whole bowl, and then I'll transfer it to storage containers. And it's really that easy. It just comes out real easily. When it's cooked, it just comes right out. Sometimes getting the last bit of it, all of it, is a little bit, but I get it all out. Okay, so now that's pretty much all of it. Okay, it's that simple, that simple. Okay, so now I'm gonna show you what I do with acorn squash. I also do the same thing with butternut squash, but I didn't make any butternut squash today. So anyway, I've got a bowl, and I just pick up one of the acorn squashes, and I just use a spoon, and when it's cooked, you can just scoop it right out of the flesh. Just be careful, don't scoop too hard, you'll get part of the flesh. And you just want the inside, you don't want any of the skin, not the flesh, the skin. You don't want to get the skin. You want to just go down enough to get all the flesh out, but no skin. And again, when it's cooked enough, it comes out really well. And I'll show you. Okay? It's all out. Then what I do is I take a fork and I just mash it. And when you have a whole bowl, I just don't want to waste all the time showing you with the whole bowl. I just mash it really good with a fork. Let me wipe my hands here. And now this is like mashed potatoes. And I'll put it in Tupperware containers, just like mashed potatoes. I'll put it in Tupperware containers and it'll keep all week long in the refrigerator. I've kept it longer than a week. This stays very well in the refrigerator. And so good. It's really delicious. Some people don't like squash. I think it's kind of, you love it, you hate it. So healthy for you, it's so good. And as you can see, it's really easy to make. Well, I hope you enjoyed my instructional video today on how to cook spaghetti squash and acorn squash today.